як діждемось ми того Великодня, то буде наш пан турецький до мечеті від'їжджати, і буде мені ключі на руки.
Are we ready? We are ready. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Women's Club of Minneapolis. I'm Kevin Winge. I'm the executive director here at the club. How great is this to see people back in person in a theater supporting such a great cause that you're doing today. So, thank you. On behalf of the Women's Club and Isle of the Lakes Lutheran Church and Isles Ensemble and our special guest today, we are thrilled that you've all come here today and have been so generous in your giving to Ukraine. A little bit of housekeeping, because that's my job as the executive director. Please remember to silence your phones. We have talked to everyone on stage today, and they are fine with photography. Just no lights, obviously, and please no filming of today's performance. But I think we're all fine with photography, because if you want to go ahead and post it on social media, that would be great as well. So very briefly, a little bit about the Women's Club before we turn it over to why you came here today. The Women's Club was founded in 1907. This building was opened in 1928. A big reason for the founding of the Women's Club was for, at that point, women in the community, but now also men, to make a real contribution to the civic life of this community. And some of the things you might not know is the Women's Club was influential in getting clean water in the public school systems. The club was influential in starting the first meals program for children in public schools. The Women's Club got the very first public nurse in a public school system in all of the United States. How many of you have been to Eloise Butler Wildflower Park? A few of you? Like almost everyone in the audience? That started in large part because of here. Helen Keller is one of the many illustrious people who have spoken at the Women's Club. And when she spoke here in 1914, it motivated the women of the Women's Club to start the Twin Cities Society for the Blind, which is today Vision Loss Resources. And we've had a relationship with them since their founding in the early teens. So what you are experiencing today is a continuation of over a century of commitment to improving the lives of people living in the Twin Cities. And obviously we can do more. Our boundaries do not stop in Minneapolis. And today we're here to show our support for the Ukraine. So thank you all for being here. A very special thanks to our friends from Schmidt Music. This is not the Steinway that you would normally see at our theater. We do have a Steinway, but our friends at Schmidt Music were very generous to donate the use of an exceptional piano for today's concert. So, welcome, enjoy, and as an executive director, I have to say, if you haven't given, give generously, and if you have given and are motivated to do more at the end of the concert, we will gladly accept your contributions. So thank you and enjoy.
Thank you all for being here this afternoon. I can't tell you how wonderful it is to see you here and support the cause that we are part of today. The piece I'm about to play, that we're about to play, is an iconic Ukrainian melody. It was in a movie, and it may be familiar to those of you that heard or saw the stream of President Zelensky speaking to our Congress here. This piece was in the background during a lot of the battle scenes that were put together for the Congress. So enjoy.
Good afternoon. I would just like to say a few words about the next pieces that we're about to play. They're composed by a most prominent Ukrainian composer who's living today, Valentin Silvestrov. Until recent events, he was living and working in Kiev. These two pieces were commissioned by an American violinist, Hilary Hahn, in 2010. And in her, not attempt, but project to revive a genre of violin encore. They are the true representation of Silvestrov's latest style of extreme simplicity, or meta music as he calls it himself, metaphorical music.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you for turning out for this event. We hope you enjoy it, and also that you remember the main reason we're doing this. Before I forget, I also want to welcome anyone who may be watching this on live stream, and to acknowledge Kevin Knievi, who is in the back there. He's doing the live stream for us. Again, all his services are donated, and he's not in the program because this has all come together. This whole thing has come together in like 2 weeks. I don't know how we've done it. I don't know how you've all gotten the word, but anyway, I want to acknowledge him and thank him, and all of you who may be watching online, please consider donating to this great cause. I also want to just say a couple things. What you're seeing is just a little bit of the Isles Ensemble. There's about half of the Isles Ensemble on this concert. We are based at a wonderful, beautiful church called Lake of the Isles Lutheran Church. And this whole idea started with Pastor Arden Haug, who has been so supportive of us being there, and he has deep ties to the crisis relief in Ukraine, and he's going to talk to you about that. I also want to just invite all of you on May 15th to come hear our concert, because we've never had this many people at one of our concerts. So that's on May 15th, Sunday, 4 o'clock. There's no Super Bowl or anything that I know of going on. So anyway, we're all so grateful for all the years of support the church has given our group. We're honored to be named after it, and I'd like to introduce Pastor Arden Haug.
Thank you, Tom. Ambassador Rubin, members of the Women's Club, members of Lake of the Isles Lutheran Church, and dear friends. Prior to my call to be the pastor at Lake of the Isles Lutheran Church, I served on behalf of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America as the representative to Europe. And my responsibilities were for our partner churches in Central Europe as well as Russia. And it is especially this area of the world that is being most dramatically affected by the war in Ukraine. And it is these churches that continue to do the work with the refugees that have found themselves outside of their own country in Ukraine. The Lutheran Church, why the Lutheran Church? It has its historic empathy for refugees. And it's personal, almost within our DNA. At the end of World War II, 20 to 25% of all Lutherans around the world were refugees. Lutherans in the newly occupied territories of the Soviet Union and Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania were forced into exile. As a German minority population in Romania, Lutherans were sent to Russia to work as a workforce for reparation. National borders were moved from west to east and east to west, and suddenly great masses of the population were moving not simply across Europe, but around the world. And many of those refugees became DPs, displaced persons living in camps for years. And this was the work of the Lutherans here in the United States to repatriate them. Today, the greatest upheaval in Ukraine is different than that of 1945. The challenges are different. In 1945, there were families that were leaving together, finding a new place in a new land. Today, we're looking at the majority of the Ukrainian refugees that are women and children, needing new places and are watching the aftermath from the neighboring countries. The Lutherans throughout Europe that we have been partnering with through the Lutheran disaster response that I've worked with personally know the dangers of the world that they live in. They also often have to speak out for the refugees in their own nations and for the minorities in their own nations. The Archbishop of the Estonian Lutheran Church, Urmas Vilma, recently spoke about those all ostracizing all Russians, stating that we must be peace seekers. On the one hand, he said, we need to condemn Putin's actions and the violence against the Ukrainian people, But on the other hand, we need to ensure that there is no rioting against the Russian population in our own society. Last Friday evening, in the Protestant church, the cathedral in Berlin, the Archbishop of the Lutheran Church in Russia and the Bishop of the Ukrainian German Lutheran Church in Ukraine worshiped together in a peace service in the cathedral. The Russian Archbishop Bauer said these words, "We see wars, tears and death, crying children, fleeing people, destroyed houses, and corpses lying around. It is a power that we alone can hardly resist, leaving us speechless. But we are not alone. We have each other. We can pray together, ask for peace, name things as they are, bear witness to the truth, and open the eyes of others." The Ukrainian Bishop Pavlo Schwartz from Kharkiv answered in response that God is present with us, especially with those who suffer. He said, "We have a God who is neither distant nor indifferent. He is there. He is with the victims of war. He is there with the suffering people. He is there in the hell of war. He weeps with them. He walks with them through the valley of death." All religious leaders of this region, whether Lutheran, Catholic, Orthodox, or Jewish, agree that people need more than words of encouragement and prayers. They need our resources as well. The local Ukrainian conductor of the Kenwood Symphony Orchestra and Linden Hills Chamber Orchestra, Yuri Ivan, who is traveling in these days along the borders of Western Ukraine and Eastern Slovakia, reports refugee camps, first aid stations, and swarms of refugees all over the little border towns of Slovakia are a pretty disturbing sight. That is the challenge for all of the international observers and organizers trying to manage the crisis. As I mentioned in the beginning, we spent 5 years serving in Central Europe, living in Slovakia, in Bratislava, a country of the same size as the United States, as the state of Minnesota. And there, that tiny country of 5 million has taken in 250,000 refugees. This is the work that the ELCA, through its Lutheran Disaster Response, is trying to be present in all of those small villages through that presence of companionship with those local churches. In one village in Slovakia, Partizanska Ljubča, a small Eastern Slovak village, the Lutheran congregation has responded to the refugee situation by collecting financial donations, arranging accommodation in the century-old parsonage, and welcoming refugees into the congregants' own homes. With a membership of only 150 people, the congregation today hosts 82 Ukrainian refugees, 22 of them living in the parsonage, 60 of them in the congregation's homes. In a sermon in the Lutheran Church on Pozdivoch, the easternmost congregation of Slovakia and the nearest to Ukraine, the Lutheran bishop, Peter Michoc, shared these words: "This is the time to not just wear the cross on our chests as a symbol that we are Christians, but to carry the cross on our backs by carrying the burden of those who are suffering." Friends, I invite you to consider and reconsider your own gifts to support the work being done in Ukraine. Today, in the gifts that we have received so far in checks, not to say those that have been given online, we have received $35,000 in the setting today. For those watching online, we invite you to go to the church's website where you will find this place as well for donating directly to the work in Ukraine of the Lutheran disaster response. God bless us all, and God bless Ukraine.
The two pieces I'm going to play are both by very well-known American composers, both with significant Minnesota ties. The first piece by Paul Schoenfeld was actually commissioned by my parents for me. He took 6 well-known British folk songs. It's part of a piece called 6 British Folk Songs for Cello and Piano, and this is the section where he took the song called The Parting Kiss. It's particularly poignant because I think we've all been watching images on TV lately of people kissing fathers and brothers and husbands goodbye and not really knowing when or if they'll see them again. So it seems particularly fitting to play this. And then the second piece by Mpls is actually originally one of his songs, which I heard sung at a wedding about 15 years ago. And I asked Steve if it would be okay if I transcribed it for cello, and he said, sure. And ever since then, it's been sort of my go-to piece of music whenever something very soothing or almost prayerful is called for. So I think that's also very appropriate.
Greetings again. Hope you're enjoying this moment in time. We're trying to make time stand still while we make sense of our emotions and hear from our distinguished guests. Our next guest is a very old friend of mine. We've known each other since childhood, and he now goes by the moniker of Ambassador Rubin. So it's with great pleasure that at this point I welcome one of my oldest friends, Eric. It's great to have you here and help us make sense out of this crazy, crazy business. Please welcome Eric Rubin.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you all for coming. And I'm really honored to be here with you today and thrilled to see such a great turnout. I did want to just say a few thank yous, first of all, to Ken, whom I have known since we were about 7, but also to everybody who helped make this day possible, including the Women's Club of Minneapolis. Thank you, Gloria Sewell, the Lake of the Isles Lutheran Church, and Pastor Hauk, and certainly the Isles Ensemble for this absolutely wonderful music. Let me just say a few things about this moment in history, and I think you can overdo those analogies, but I think this is a moment in history, and I think it's one of the reasons it's so important that we come together now to do what we can to help the people who are so affected by this moment in history. We have not really seen a crisis like this certainly in my lifetime, in my adult lifetime, And this in many ways represents, I think, the ending to the Cold War that really never came 30 years ago. The most important piece of it, obviously, is the human piece, is the humanitarian piece, and that's why it's so important to do what we can to help those in need and to make it possible for people who've escaped this horrific crisis to find safety and to put their kids in school and to put a roof over their heads and hopefully go back to Ukraine someday soon. But beyond the humanitarian crisis, this is a challenge to everything that we as a country, together with our democratic allies, have worked for and built. And in some ways, I think it's a wake-up call that the end of the Cold War maybe wasn't quite what we thought it was. I think there was a time when we thought that everything had really broken our way, that the world had adopted our way of life and of living, and we didn't have to pay for running the world anymore because things were just going to go our way. And as a matter of fact, those of you who remember that time 30 years ago remember the terms peace dividend, and the idea was not only was everything going our way, but we were going to get paid for it. How great is that? In reality, things have not gone tremendously well in many respects in the past 20 years, but most importantly, we're now at a moment where the values that we believe in as Americans and that we share with our democratic allies around the world, what kind of society people should live in, how children should be raised, what the concepts of tolerance and inclusion mean, are really under threat. And many of us never expected to see a moment like this, a moment where what you could almost call 19th century nationalism has reared its head again and is threatening the peace and security of the world. This is a difficult moment. We need to pull together at this time, but we also need to stand up for the people of Ukraine, and that's why your being here today is so meaningful. Ukraine, ironically or not, was doing pretty well until a few months ago, having built a democratic society, having built a society with elected government and free media and freedom of religion, and a very hopeful view of the future, a multi-ethnic, non-nationalist future that was inclusive, that is inclusive, and I guess sadly was a threat to the vision of the leaders of today's Russia, and therefore they have set out to destroy it because Ukraine's very existence is a threat to what they've done in Russia. And that's why I think, above all, we have to be there not just for the people, to help the people who are suffering so much, but also to stand up for those values. And I think if you saw President Biden's comments yesterday, this is civilizational. I've lived in Ukraine, I've lived in Russia. It is a heartbreaking moment to see those two countries at war, but it's important to remember who started this war, and it certainly wasn't Ukraine. And second of all, to focus on those values that we hold dear, that are represented in this moment by the people of Ukraine, who did not bring this on themselves in any way, and sincerely, I think, just want to live in peace and freedom and live their lives. And I think we have to resolve that they will get back to that. They will go home. Ukraine will not just survive, but will thrive. And the vision, the dark vision that has been posed as the alternative view of how people should live, the vision of dictatorship and oppression must not succeed, cannot succeed, and I believe will not succeed. It's a tough moment, and we, I think, collectively have to be ready to sacrifice and to do what we can to help get through this moment and see that the values that we believe in not just, again, survive, but thrive, and that Ukraine come out of this a stronger, more cohesive society with those values and with its rich history going back over 1,000 years. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you again. Your coming out means so much. to those of us who are doing what we can to support the people of Ukraine, to support the survival of democracy and human values at this really painful time. And I would just want to say thank you for any contributions you've made. All of us are, I think, going to do everything we can to help Ukraine get through this and to see Ukraine succeed and at the end of the day win this battle. So thank you so much for coming, and thank you for inviting me. I'm really honored to be here. Thank you.
Before I start, I wanted to say a few things. This is a cello, but it's an electric cello. And it's kind of reminiscent of the kinds of instruments that professional cellists used to take on the train to practice when they went across the country. Doesn't make a whole lot of sound. But now it has electronics in it, and you can put headphones on and practice in the hotel room where your kids are screaming and everything. It's amazing. So it'll take me just a minute to get set up, but I want to say something about this piece that I'm going to play. Carolyn Shaw, some of you may know of her, is an amazing composer. She's the youngest person to win the Pulitzer Prize. She was just here in town in February. I don't know if any of you heard that. I know her very well. I've been able to perform with her. She's an incredible singer and violist. And she's written many very interesting and very, very beautiful pieces. So I urge you to get to know her music. It's really cool. But anyway, this piece, it's not really written for electric cello, but it's meant to be played with candlelight in the back of in the back of a church somewhere. So I find that when it's a larger space, it's so intimate in a lot of ways that playing it on my electric works great, and it has a little bit of reverb, which you can sort of imagine is in a church. And the piece, it's called In Manus Tuas. It's based on the last words of Christ before he passed away. Into your hands I commend my spirit. And the composer Thomas Tallis wrote a beautiful motet in the Renaissance time, and Caroline heard this piece, and she sort of based some of it on the harmonies. But there are some very unusual sounds that you will I hope you'll hear over the ventilation system. But to me, they represent where life comes from and where life is going before birth even, and after death. And it's really a beautiful piece and very contemplative, and maybe at the beginning especially close your eyes and imagine you're in the back nave of a beautiful church somewhere. So In Manus Tuas by Carolyn Shaw. I'll just be a minute to get set up.
We hope you have enjoyed our afternoon of music. Before we begin, while we're setting up for this last piece, Silvestrov was an extraordinary composer, very political in a way. He went out into the town square in Kyiv after the war in 2014 and started just gathering up music, almost like found sound. And this prayer that you're about to hear came out of that, sort of this prayer that we've had arranged for your benefit.